A new judge assigned to the San Onofre nuclear power plant case. The critics who are raising questions about her San Diego history.
We just came down from Mira Mesa today to play in the water and keep cool.
Flying in the face of all those El Nino warnings, a welcome warming trend in San Diego. A timeline on storms brewing off in the Pacific.
People love it. Like they get it tastes good, it's good for us, and you know there's an economy around it. There's just so many reasons why I think it's making a comeback.
And it's the latest buzz for San Diego's beer industry. The scientists teaming up with fermentation fans. The quest to see how that changes the microbes in our guts. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. New details on faculty contract talks for the California State University system. Union members now have a start date for a possible 5-day strike at all campuses, including San Diego State and Cal State San Marcos. KPBS education reporter Matt Bowler says some professors have gone a decade without a raise.
In Sacramento, the California Faculty Association says they sacrificed during the hard times with furloughs and salary cuts, and now the recession is over, they deserve a raise.
We did all that in the hopes that when good times came, we would be able to negotiate a good contract. And then the good times came, and we're still not able to negotiate a good contract.
The union and the CSU are in the fact-finding phase of their negotiations. The sticking point is salary. The CSU is offering 2%, and the union says 5% is as low as they'll go. The CSU has 47,000 faculty and staff that serve nearly 500,000 students. According to the Faculty Association, the average CSU professor makes around $46,000 a year. Arzu Oskal teaches graphic design at San Diego State. She says 5% isn't a lot of money, but it symbolizes respect.
Like, it's not really going to change my life drastically getting a 5% raise, or anybody's life. It's not really that much. And 2% is a joke.
Professor Doreen Mattingly says this strike is about more than just salaries.
When does the middle class find a vehicle to stand up and say, no, we're not moving backwards anymore? And people aren't familiar with unions being that vehicle, but that's exactly what's happening here. It's a union of middle-class workers fighting for the middle class.
A possible strike is set to start Wednesday, April 13th and run through Tuesday, the 19th. The California State University released a statement saying if a strike occurs, campuses intend to remain open. Many classes will be offered, and students should check with their instructors regarding the status of their classes. The strike should not interfere with students being able to complete their semester and quarter courses and graduate on time. Matt Bowler, KPBS News.
A minimum wage increase and paid sick leave is on the horizon as the City Council made a unanimous decision today to place the measure on the June primary election ballot. The hike in wages was adopted 2 years ago by the council, but opponents collected enough signatures on a petition to force it into a public vote. The increase to an $11.50 minimum wage will be phased in through 2017. San Diego workers would also be eligible to earn up to 40 hours of sick leave. Leadership under fire. The California Coastal Commission will discuss whether to fire the agency's director. Charles Lester this week. San Diego Supervisor Greg Cox sits on the commission. He has some complaints about leadership. He says Coastal Commission staff got funding to help local communities develop local coastal plans, or LCPs.
I've been frustrated with how it's 40 years after the Coastal Act was approved, and yet there's, I think, 106 different local coastal plan segments up and down the coast of California, and we've got something like 32 of them that still, 40 years later, have not been completed.
Cox says he would like to see authority for coastal development rest with local communities. Lester supporters say his ouster would benefit developers who found the state commission a powerful defender of California's coastline. A state regulatory judge newly assigned to the San Onofre nuclear power plant case has a history with San Diego. As KPBS reporter Amita Sharma explains, it's one that critics say doesn't bode well for consumers.
Mary Beth Bushy recently replaced Melanie Darling as the judge overseeing the San Onofre case at the California Public Utilities Commission. Darling's retirement capped a controversial tenure. She secretly communicated with the Southern California Edison manager about crucial evidence while she presided over an inquiry into what went wrong at San Onofre and later excluded that evidence. The plant closed after faulty new equipment leaked radiation. Bushy presided over a case involving San Diego Gas and Electric's effort to make customers pay for expenses insurance companies would not cover after the 2007 wildfires. SDG&E lines ignited those fires. Bushy initially ruled against the utility, but then she allowed the utility to enter secret talks and kept out relevant evidence. San Diego consumer lawyer Mike Aguirre says Bushy's assignment to the San Onofre case contains a message from state regulators.
They're literally putting someone in there in the name of ALJ Bushy who is a clear signal that we are not going to change.
Bushy did not respond to a request for comment. Edison declined comment. Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
Displaced residents in Porter Ranch will have more time to return to their homes once the well that has been leaking natural gas has been plugged. The agreement between city officials and Southern California Gas means almost 5,700 residents will be given up to 8 days to move back to their homes rather than the 48 hours originally given. Residents will also receive reimbursements for moving expenses back into their homes. SoCal Gas expects the well to be plugged by the end of this month. Evangelicals had a large effect on the Iowa caucus, but how about in New Hampshire? AP reporter Alex Sands looks ahead to tomorrow's first-in-the-nation primary.
In snowy New Hampshire,
I think it is going to work.
Town halls,
Hello, everybody.
rallies, and changing dynamics.
It's not going to be decided by the media.
I think it's very two-sided. I think people see it and say, wow, it's hopeless. But then on the other hand, people are saying, we need to change it. There's something we can do.
In this more moderate independent state, the candidates face a different electorate.
It's okay, for New Hampshire voters, it's all right if politicians talk about religion in a generic sense. Like love your neighbor, that sort of thing. But they don't want to get too deep into the weeds, so to speak, about religious doctrine and so forth.
Roughly 1 in 5 Republicans here are evangelical. In Iowa, where Ted Cruz won the caucus, close to 60% were.
Know the candidates and know what they stand for.
The message at this New Hampshire church: vote the Bible.
When we're saying go to the polls and vote, it is an idea that we need to rally people together to say, vote biblical values. But it's not just biblical values, it's get the right candidate who can also govern and lead us.
In the Democratic race, the dynamic is not religion, but geography. Bernie Sanders of neighboring Vermont is thought to have an edge over Hillary Clinton, who won the primary here in 2012. Across the state, there's frustration with Washington.
Nothing. There's a big zero. There's no movement. There's no movement. So we have to get going. We have to people gather together, make something change.
The wild card, undeclared voters, the state's largest voting bloc. They can vote in either primary.
Historically, New Hampshire has one of the highest voter turnout rates in the country. The state is predicting record turnout for this, its 100th primary, 550,000 votes cast, more than 60% of the state's registered voters. Alex Sands, The Associated Press, Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
The PBS NewsHour will have special coverage of tomorrow night's primary contests. From the results to analysis, NewsHour takes a look at what goes into a presidential campaign, and that starts tomorrow night at 11 right here on KPBS. President Obama is asking for more than $1.8 billion from Congress to fund the fight against the Zika virus. Health officials say the money is crucial for research into the birth defect known as microcephaly, which is associated with the virus. The money will also speed up development of a possible vaccine, as well as expanding a control on mosquitoes.
We expect with the warmer months to come that more risk will be present. And so this is really a time where we need to scale. We need to scale up the diagnostics that are getting shipped out, and we need to be working on better diagnostics so that problem that a pregnant woman has about, well, you might have this, but we're not exactly sure. You know, time is really precious for this kind of emerging infection.
Thank you guys. Zika is suspected of causing birth defects in babies. Pregnant Americans are urged to avoid traveling to areas affected by the virus. And we've been warned for months that February could be an intense time for El Niño's torrential downpours, flooding, and erosion. Well, here's the reality. People are flocking to beaches and parks to bask in the sun. A massive high-pressure dome spanning much of the West Coast has pushed temperatures up to 20 degrees above the average for this time of year. Even so, National Weather Service meteorologist Alex Tardy says don't put away your rain boots just yet.
The baking of this week doesn't mean El Niño's fizzling, doesn't mean high pressure is all of a sudden forming and it's never going to go away. In fact, it's the opposite. The high pressure that we have now, the warm weather we have now, is being created from tremendous amount of storms that are sitting over in the Central Pacific.
And Tardy says significant storm activity is expected to return to San Diego County by the end of the month, and the rainy season will likely continue through April. In the meantime, enjoy the pause in winter. Candace Carnell and her daughter Violet joined dozens of others today at the waterfront park along the Embarcadero.
We just came down from Mira Mesa today to play in the water and keep cool. This was one of our favorite parks.
And the warm and dry weather is expected to stick around for at least a week. Molly Cochran has more on what we can expect for this San Diego warming trend in tonight's KPBS weather report.
Well, it's been a beautiful past couple days, and it's looking like we're going to stay dry even as we head into the middle to later half of the week. Here's a look at our satellite and radar over the past 6 hours, and we can see nothing but clear skies across California, San Francisco, Fresno, into LA and San Diego. What we do have happening is a ridge type of pattern setting up, and that's an indicator that we'll have clear skies. Large area of high pressure bringing us plenty of bright sunshine. Notice we can see some clouds offshore coming off to the north, and when we do have a ridge type pattern, any of those storms or cloud cover really getting deflected across sections of the region, and that's how we're going to stay into the later half of the week. Here's a look closer to home across San Diego County. Nothing but clear skies as we head into the remainder of the night. The coastline, interior sections, all included in this. Now, one thing that we did have happen today were some Santa Ana winds, but those are starting to lighten and calm down, so that advisory going to be expiring. Here's a look at those temperatures as we head into the overnight hours. Pretty close to average for this time of year along the immediate coastline. Low of 56 in San Diego, Ramona right around 51 for a low, and 43 in Mount Laguna, all looking at clear and quiet conditions. Now, we are going to be approaching record temperatures as we head into Tuesday and Wednesday across San Diego County. Some of those records were set in the 2000s, so we are just very warm for this time of year. LA included in this, also across the interior sections of Southern California, and it looks like the sunshine here to stay. So unfortunately, not the best of news for the drought conditions, but it is definitely nice if you want to head out to the beach and enjoy yourself. Lots of opportunities to do so. So for Tuesday, daytime high of 80. That is above average for this time of year. Upper 70s stick around Wednesday and Thursday across the immediate coastline with plenty of bright sunshine, and even into the upcoming weekend, things are looking dry as of now, but we are expecting temperatures to come down a few degrees. Here's a look farther inland. We'll have those temperatures also in the 80s for Tuesday and Wednesday. 77 for a high on Thursday, and expecting bright sunny skies. I even have taken a look at some of those models into the middle half of February, and it looks like this dry pattern really going to continue. Here's a look at the mountainous regions. Temperatures in the mid to upper 60s, 68 for Thursday and Friday. We will expect the warmth to sit around for the afternoon, but cooling off quite a bit as the sun goes down. Desertous regions, we're getting into the mid 80s. It's going to be feeling very warm and also bright sunny skies. Molly Cochran, KPBS News.
How should the city of San Diego spend the money it's collected from taxes and fees? Well, that was the topic at the City Council meeting today. All 9 council members agreed public safety and infrastructure should be top spending priorities. But only the 5 Democrats mentioned homelessness and the climate action plan. Councilman Todd Gloria encouraged city staffers to continue to work on creating a special fund to help poor San Diegans pay their water bills, especially after the council increased water rates in November.
There was a great deal of public testimony about the impacts this would have on low-income San Diegans who are already struggling to make their bills. I know staff working through the Environment Committee has been working on a low-income fund for some time now. I think the budget does provide us an opportunity to start that fund out in earnest, and I'd like to see us do that.
And you can go to kpbs.org for more information on the San Diego City Council's budget priorities. President Barack Obama's budget proposal this week is expected to include the launch of a $12 billion effort to keep low-income children fed when school is out. KPBS reporter Megan Burke says San Diego hunger relief advocates are lauding the plan.
It would give parents of children who qualify for free school meals about 45 additional CalFresh or food stamp dollars each month during the summer. Currently in San Diego County, a handful of schools and recreation centers in each community open their doors to serve lunch during break. But Robin McNulty with the San Diego Hunger Coalition says more than 68,000 kids in need aren't making it to those sites.
That's a lot of children in San Diego County during the summer months that do not have access to healthy food.
The program would roll out over 10 years and has already been piloted in other states. San Diego Congresswoman Susan Davis has twice sponsored bills to expand the program, but they failed to make it out of committee. Megan Burks, KPBS News.
Pain at the pumps. Oil industry experts say California has the most expensive gas in the nation. Californians pay an average of 75 cents more per gallon than the rest of the nation. A consumer advocacy group says gas companies drove up the cost of gas by creating a false shortage. Other industry experts blame Governor Brown's aggressive climate change and clean energy policies.
We're also adding about 15 cents a gallon to our fuel price through cap and trade or greenhouse gas regulation reductions, and we have some of the most expensive highway and sales taxes in the state, in the nation.
The governor proposed a revamping of the state's gas tax during his budget proposal last month. A disease that affects roughly a quarter of Americans is getting a closer look in San Diego. UC School of Medicine says it's creating a center to research non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It's a chronic condition that can lead to cirrhosis, liver cancer, and liver failure. A spokesman for UC San Diego says the center will serve as a one-stop shop for research into the condition. There are new standards for maternity leave in the military. The policy is aimed at retaining women in the military. KPBS reporter Steve Walsh explains why some say it's a step back.
Lieutenant Abigail Drudge just came back to her job as a public affairs officer at Camp Pendleton after giving birth to her son.
I give every stay-at-home mom credit because it is a very tough job. It's a very rewarding job, but it was definitely just the time to spend with my son, developing our relationship, getting to really know him.
The Marine was under an old policy begun in July which allowed sailors and Marines to take up to 18 weeks of maternity leave. Secretary of Defense Ash Carter created a policy across the military allowing 12 weeks of paid leave, a step up for the Army and Air Force. Carter defended the lower number while in San Diego last week.
On the one hand, the more maternity leave, the easier it makes things for mothers who want to take that maternity leave. And on the other hand, there are impacts on readiness.
Carter says 12 weeks struck the right balance between helping retain women who cite family conflicts as one reason for leaving the military. The military is also keeping daycare centers open longer so kids can be dropped off before mothers report to duty. It was a program piloted last year at Naval Base San Diego. The Defense Department is also asking Congress to increase parental leave for men from 10 days to 14. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
The Chargers have hired a special advisor to help craft a possible ballot measure for a new stadium in San Diego. He's longtime San Diego civic leader Fred Moss, who used to head the Center City Development Corporation. In a statement, the team said Moss will advise Dean Spanos on the initiative process, financing plans, and the campaign to get the measure passed. And the San Diego Chargers and the NFL continue to work against domestic violence. A new county-wide outreach campaign will feature Chargers players on public service announcements with anti-domestic violence messages.
Take the pledge with us. Now is the time to put a stop to dating violence.
For the second year, the group No More has anti-domestic violence spots like this one airing during Super Bowl 50 with the goal of shining more light on the issue. The NFL is committing $5 million a year for 5 years to the National Domestic Violence Hotline. And less people were watching the Super Bowl this year compared to the past 2 years. This year, 111.9 million viewers tuned in to watch the Denver Broncos beat the Carolina Panthers. That made it the third most watched event in U.S. TV history. The record still holds at 114.4 million viewers when New England and Seattle took to the field last year. The Super Bowl had set viewership records in 6 of 7 years until this one. And if you've ever enjoyed a nice San Diego craft beer, you have fermentation to thank. The buzz you got was from ethanol, a byproduct of fermentation, and many scientists suspect fermented foods and drinks be beneficial to the microbes in your guts. KPBS science reporter David Wagner says San Diego researchers are connecting with local fermentation fans to find out more.
At the San Diego Fermentation Festival, people are packing cabbage and other seasonal vegetables into airtight mason jars. When they're done, they'll seal the jars and let fermentation take over. Bacteria will get to work breaking down sugars and producing tangy lactic acid. After a few weeks, the result should be a delicious twist on sauerkraut.
People like me have rediscovered the tradition of fermented foods.
Austin Durant is the organizer behind the festival, now in its second year.
And people love it. Like they get it tastes good, it's good for us, and you know, there's an economy around it. There's just so many reasons why I think it's making a comeback.
The festival booths offer a bounty of locally made fermented goods. Attendees can sample everything from craft beer to kimchi, wine to kombucha. UC San Diego's Rob Knight got interested in the festival because he and his colleagues wanted to sample something else, microbes.
We're really excited about the possibility of sampling people who eat a lot of fermented foods.
Knight heads up the American Gut Project, an ongoing effort to catalog the trillions of microbes found in each of our bodies. Thousands of curious volunteers have already sent in samples from their saliva, their hands, and, yes, their feces. All those samples have given Knight a good baseline picture of the microbes found in a standard human gut. But he also wants to know what's going on in guts that are not so standard.
One thing that's very interesting is in the American Gut Project, we've been seeing that people who eat more fermented food tend to have higher diversity of gut microbes.
Knight wants to know more about the connection between gut health and fermented foods. Fermentation is a process rich in living microorganisms known as probiotics. There's already some evidence that specific probiotics can ease symptoms of conditions like irritable bowel syndrome. But how exactly does making and eating fermented food change a person's gut microbes? Which specific foods or drinks should people consume to get a desired probiotic effect? Knight reached out to people at the Fermentation Festival to start coming up with answers to these kinds of questions.
Reaching out both to people who consume fermented foods and to people who prepare fermented foods we think is incredibly interesting.
By getting in touch with the organizers, Knight was able to get an array of samples from 12 festival participants.
This is our sour blonde with watermelon.
Grant Fraley was one of the people who provided samples. He and his wife run a small brewery in Ramona called Chuck Alec.
So we, swabbed our tongue, hands, some of our beer, various, cutting board, things like that.
Researchers with the American Gut Project can now analyze Fraley's samples and compare them with the existing database, teasing out similarities and differences. Fraley makes one particular beer, a sour blonde, that derives its unique flavor from bacteria.
Normally in beer, we don't let any bacteria in, or we attempt to keep it to just yeast as the main actor in fermentation, but we intentionally put lactobacillus in this beer to make it tart, kind of zesty, refreshing character.
Researchers can now start to see how brewing and drinking this bacteria-rich sour beer may be affecting Fraley's gut microbes and how that may be affecting his gut health. Knight does not yet have enough samples from fermentation enthusiasts to draw detailed conclusions about how their gut microbes deviate from the norm. He wants to collect a lot more samples. He hopes to put hard data behind a feeling shared by many people at this festival, the feeling that embracing fermentation has changed them for the better.
And that can be all kinds of things, from just feeling like they have better energy to more specific things like remission of irritable bowel syndrome. What's really exciting is turning those feelings into something more scientific.
So if there is a scientifically sound reason to feel good about improving our gut health while drinking a beer, let's hope Knight finds it. David Wagner, KPBS News.
And KPBS video journalist Nick McVicker helped produce that story. If you're interested in getting samples, go to americangut.org. The year of the monkey is here, and people are flocking to parades and shows to welcome the Chinese New Year. Today marks the first day of the week-long celebration in China. People are gathering at temples to make their New Year wishes and taking to the streets to dance and feast. Here in San Diego, we'll have the 34th annual Chinese New Year Food and Cultural Fair this weekend. The event is free and will take place downtown from 10 to 5 p.m. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great evening. Good night.